There is a name that needs no translation. Say it in New York, London, Toronto, or Dubai, and the reaction is instant. A flicker of recognition, maybe even envy. Rolex. Not just a watch, but a symbol so powerful that people who know nothing about watchmaking still know exactly what it means to own one. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. Rolex did not begin as a symbol of wealth. It began as the obsession of a poor German orphan who had every reason to fail, and almost none of the advantages his eventual rivals had. This is the story of how a man with no fortune, no family watchmaking legacy, and no natural home in the Swiss watch world built the single most recognized luxury brand on the planet, and how a handful of ruthless, brilliant decisions turned a small London workshop into an empire that, to this day, refuses to bow to any competitor. Hans Wilsdorf lost both of his parents by the age of 12. He grew up passed between relatives, with no inheritance and no clear path forward. And yet he developed an almost unnatural obsession with precision and detail, a trait that would define everything he touched. In 1905, at just 24 years old, with borrowed capital and a partner in his brother-in-law, he started a small company in London selling watch movements imported from Switzerland. At the time, this was considered a strange business to be in. Wristwatches were seen as delicate, unreliable, almost feminine accessories. Real men carried pocket watches, and no serious watchmaker believed the wrist was the future. Wilsdorf believed otherwise, and he bet his entire future on being right. In 1908, he coined a short, sharp, easily pronounced word for his brand, Rolex, a name built for no language in particular, designed to be recognized anywhere on Earth. It was a strange kind of foresight for a man running a tiny operation with almost no capital, but it hinted at the scale he was already imagining. The turning point came in 1926, and it remains one of the boldest engineering achievements in watch history. Rolex unveiled the Oyster, the world's first truly waterproof and dust-proof wristwatch, sealed so tightly that water and dust simply could not penetrate the case. It was a remarkable invention, but Wilsdorf knew that inventions alone don't build empires, proof does. So he did something almost nobody in business had thought to do before. In 1927, he strapped an oyster to the wrist of a young British swimmer named Mercedes Gleitze and sent her into the freezing waters of the English Channel. She swam for over 10 grueling hours. When she emerged, exhausted but victorious, the watch on her wrist was still ticking perfectly, completely unaffected by hours of saltwater submersion. Wilsdorf placed a full-page advertisement in a major newspaper the following week, and in doing so, he didn't just sell a watch. He invented the celebrity endorsement, the extreme stress test, and the idea that a Rolex doesn't just survive hardship, it thrives in it. This single moment set the tone for everything Rolex would become for the next century. From that point forward, Rolex stopped chasing watchmaking trends and started creating the milestones everyone else would have to chase. In 1931, the brand introduced the perpetual rotor, the first self-winding mechanism using a swinging weight, eliminating the need to manually wind a watch ever again. A mechanism so effective it still powers automatic watches today. In 1953, the Submariner emerged as one of the first true professional dive watches, built to withstand pressure at depths that would crush ordinary instruments. And that same year, Rolex watches were worn on the first successful ascent of Mount Everest, forever linking the brand to human triumph over impossible odds. Then, in 1960, Rolex did something almost unthinkable. It attached a specially engineered watch to the outside of the Trieste submersible and sent it nearly 7 miles down into the Mariana Trench, the deepest, darkest, most crushing environment on the entire planet. When the vessel resurfaced, the watch was still functioning perfectly. Rolex had just survived the bottom of the ocean. But here's where the story shifts from engineering to something far more calculated. Wilsdorf realized that trust and performance could only take the brand so far. What came next was the deliberate construction of desire itself. While competitors rushed to produce as many watches as possible to maximize profit, Rolex made the opposite decision. It intentionally limited supply, creating scarcity in a market hungry for status. Authorized dealers developed waiting lists. Certain models became almost impossible to walk in and buy on demand. This wasn't a flaw in Rolex's operations, it was the entire strategy. When something becomes difficult to obtain, human psychology does the rest. People don't just want it more, they start to believe that owning it means something about who they are. Rolex quietly transformed itself from a manufacturer of tools into a manufacturer of aspiration. And it did so while barely ever raising its voice in advertising. No brand shouted less and was heard more. Then came the moment that fused Rolex permanently into global pop culture. And this is where the climax of the story truly detonates. In 1962, a British spy named James Bond appeared on movie screens around the world. Wearing a Rolex Submariner on his wrist in Dr. No, and audiences everywhere absorbed a message without a single word being spoken. Sophistication, danger, and success all wear the same watch. From that moment, Rolex appeared on the wrists of astronauts, world leaders, Formula One, champions, tennis legends, and Wall Street titans. Not as paid placement, but as an almost unconscious visual shorthand for a rival. Hip-hop artists rapped about it as proof of overcoming hardship. Fathers began gifting it to their children at graduations, promotions, and weddings, transforming it from a purchase into an inheritance, something carrying memory as much as mechanics. Rolex had achieved something almost no company in history manages to pull off. It became a universal symbol of success across every culture, industry, and generation simultaneously. And it did it not through desperation, but through complete and total control of its own myth. Today, that myth has become an empire that dwarfs nearly every rival combined. Rolex is estimated to command roughly a third of the entire value of the Swiss luxury watch industry, despite producing a relatively narrow range of models. Certain watches now resell for more than double or triple their original retail price, an almost unheard-of phenomenon for a manufactured object. And crucially, Rolex remains privately owned by a foundation established after Wilsdorf's death, meaning it answers to no shareholders demanding short-term profit, no public markets forcing compromises. It can afford to think in decades, not quarters. It continues developing proprietary materials, scratch-proof ceramics, magnetism-resistant components, refinements most owners will never notice, but that quietly reinforce a 100-year-old reputation for obsession with detail. So when you look at a Rolex today, understand that you are not just looking at a watch. You are looking at the final product of a century-long psychological experiment in scarcity, storytelling, and human desire, engineered by an orphan who had nothing, and who understood something the rest of the world took decades to catch up to. But here's the question almost nobody asks, the one that could quietly threaten everything Rolex has built. In a world of smartwatches, biometric tracking, and instant digital status, why does a mechanical piece of metal that tells time less accurately than a $2 phone still command more desire than almost anything else humans can buy? The answer to that question may determine whether Rolex reigns for another 100 years, or whether the very same psychology that built its empire is quietly being rewritten by a generation that no longer wants to wait for anything at all.